Hey, welcome. This is The Process. My name is Dr. John Bush. This is Lesson 11, Principal Component Analysis of Tight Ends for 2021. And basically, it's part of my journey to help us all win our fantasy football drafts. This is not the end of the process, it's just the end of the beginning. Please look at the other lessons to kind of get going. Don't have time to repeat everything. Again, I'm a college, actually university professor, biologist actually, and microbiologist. And this is in the style that I give lectures with the era of COVID. So I'm used to PowerPoint voiceovers, and so I convert it to a movie and then upload it to the YouTube or some of the other sites. I do write for fantasy fakepigskin.com. Please hang with them. Probably going to move to more this style of delivery because my targets and snaps per minute and all that rankings with uncertainty levels and lots of fun stuff. I think probably moving towards this because it's just quicker for me than to write and think about things, and I like the off the cuff ideas. So we're continuing with tight ends, and so the principal component analysis is a way for us to prune data. Again, too much information makes us more confident about the same level of accuracy. So we spend a lot of time pretty much wasted when one or two key variables are enough to at least get us going. And that's the whole purpose of what I do, the principal component analysis every year, to try to update last year's performance at the end of season performance, EOS, I guess. And tight ends are fairly straightforward compared to running backs and wide receivers, actually. The first most important is pass catching ability and then passing efficiency. So actually it's reversed on that. The just my bad here. That should have been a 1 and that should have been a 2. But anyway, these are the metric numbers that I use to measure those variables. One is yards, passing yards, and the other one is yards per reception. And you can see 0.98 versus 0.76. This is the more important one of the two. I mean, if somebody had a gun and say, how do you judge tight ends with nothing else, one variable, you would pick passing yards. But we have the fun that we can make our model with yards versus receptions, and we can do the efficiency and the ability concepts here. So I've explained in the previous lessons how I use these and calculate using the data from 2020. And here's an example. This is just a straight rankings at the end of the year, looking at tight ends versus reception yards, yards per reception, Y/recept there, and then fantasy points. And then we'll see what the model spits out as far as how the principal component analysis looked at 2020 here. But this is the beginning. And again, I urge you to learn Excel and pivot tables. And, the trick is, I know I'm saving you some time, and that's great. But, there's learning to do yourself, I think is kind of fun too, but that's me. And here's I guess the top 48 I ranked or going to look at. Okay. So now we come to this screen, and I just showed you the numbers there, uh, the reception yards, yards per reception, and the fantasy points. And so scaled reception yards and scaled yards per reception, that's just my little scary things there. That's kind of what it looks like to me. And I calculated that based on the metrics previous, and you can go back to the lesson where I actually take it through a little bit. And long story short, I develop a metric I call principal component model number, and I then divide that by the number of games played, because I think you're going to miss something there, at least the beginning. And in this case, it's George Kittle here. He only played 8 games. But when you run him metrics through the model per game, he really stands out to me. And the number is 0.139. The next number is 0.111, which is Kelsey. So I think there's an opportunity there. I understand people are concerned with injuries. If you can figure out how to predict injuries, then you can, beat a lot of people doing that. I'm not sure I can. But anyway, here's the top 24 based on the model number divided by their games played. And you notice that that's going to be different than the actual fantasy points that occurred in 2020. So now that's interesting to me when I see a disparity in what the public's going to see. Most of the people are going to look at PPR fantasy points, and that's 5 minutes for the draft. That's kind of going to sketch it out. Oh, I'm going to do it this way. And this allows us an outsider view that uses some metrics there, modeling metrics, and gives us a little bit more of a different foundation to look at. And here's the top 48 here. You can take a look at that. And what I did was then I took all the information and I went through and looked at the tier levels. And so, and I think I had this different on the running backs, but this is the ranking based on the fantasy points at the end of the season. Fantasy points. Wish I had a better virtual pen there. But anyway, so 19 versus 1. That gets me very intrigued. Definitely want to take a look at Kittle heavily and try to begin some research to figure out what this is really telling us. I think the model is saying if he played all the games, he would have beat Kelsey. And again, maybe I'm wrong, and that's fine. But, he had an opportunity certainly to get in the top 3 conversation. Kelsey is clearly number 2, and so they're very distinct from the others. Goddard and Waller are 3 and 4. And again, Goddard may be, here's 20th, but he was 4th. So that may be an interest. A lot of factors with him, though, as you with Ertz and everything. So but it's a beginning for us to look at the information. That's all we can do is start the process, right? And we have something to start it with, start our investigations. That's what we're doing. We're using the principal component analysis to prune the data, get a view from a statistical point of view, not a judgment point of view, okay? Because we are all flawed human and we have biases, okay? I know if you're listening to the loud talking podcasters, they are, super mortals. But for the rest of us, we're all biased. And I hope we at least realize we are. That will at least be helpful. Next, we have Andrews, Gasecki, Rogers. Rogers is playing up here per game now. He was 36, so that's interesting. And consider what that means there. So to me, Rogers is of interest. And then we have, of course, Gronk. Rudolph, even though he got thrown away by Minnesota, and Jared Cook got thrown away by New Orleans, they may be some surprises. They may be some targets if you're doing best ball, maybe your second tight end or something. Think about that. It might be helpful, may not, but it might be. Moving on, we have a big hunk of 5 here. Dawson Knox was 35th, but 11th in the model. And Irv Smith was 23rd and 14th. Hawkinson was 5th, but he only came in at 15. So that is kind of some downside concern. So these numbers can show you some minefields, as well as some kind of what I call anti-sleepers. These are people that they think are sleepers, but they're really maybe not. Then we have Akins, Ertz, Higbee, and Arnold. Not sure there's, I'm not sure how much meat's on the bone at this point. Ingram was, was fairly well, and Robert Tonyan, and Logan Thomas, Hurst. To me, these are all really tight ends I want to be cautious with. Okay, not saying their numbers weren't real. They certainly were real, but it's just we've got to think what's going on for 2021. So I think there's some alarm bells there that we should pay attention to. So this information allows us to find targets for deeper research. That's how it should be used. It shouldn't be, follow this script, right? There's no secret magic formula that, you pull out. A lot of places sell these here. Here's the draft sheet, 1 page, go for it. Well, it's not how I do things, and I like my own show. So I urge you to avoid the simple and consider a little bit more the complexity of fantasy football. Let's see what else. Oh, and we went down to 48. So maybe if you need 3 tight ends in best ball or something, there may be some players in here of interest. Just look around a little bit, see what might be happening out there. I think, this data, like I said, you can pause it and do a screenshot if you want this. I may try to put some of these up on Fake Pigskin. My bad. I just hadn't got around to it. Needless to say, I got lots of irons in the fire. Okay. Well, that was our 10-cent tour of the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning. Yeah, it's the end of the beginning for tight end tiering like tiers for 2021. I hope you enjoyed it. Come back. The process always continues. This is Dr. Bush signing off.